We are so thrilled to have you tonight, and we want to know who's ready to hear from our artists today. Well, I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Joan Morgan, who is the Program Director for the Center for Black Visual Culture, and is here to welcome you and our special guests, as well as tell you a little bit more about our initiative at the center, the Black Rest Project. Dr. Joan Morgan?
Well, hello everyone, and I would like to thank you for your patience. I am Dr. Joan Morgan, the Program Director for the Center for Black Visual Culture here at NYU. And we are so happy to have you and to welcome you and our special guests and tell you a little bit more about the Black Rest Project, which is our 3 to 5 year initiative here at the CBVC. The goal of the Black Rest Project is to amplify visual narratives, spoken narratives, musical narratives of Black rest. We believe that if you don't see it, you can't do it. Most of us have very mixed emotions about resting, particularly those of us who have come to this country and to the quote-unquote new world all over the diaspora for the purposes solely of labor. So this is, those beautiful images downstairs are meant to rest and soothe you, but they're also a deliberate disruption of what our architect of this project, Tricia Hersey, the Nat Bishop, is so rightfully referred to as grind culture, and rest as resistance. This is a resistance project, and we're so delighted to have you here to hear these artists talk about their work. We are in partnership with multiple organizations, youth organizations, arts organizations, The Ohio State University, UCLA, other faculty here at NYU, the National Foundation of Young Arts, Brother and Sister Soul are just some of our collaborating partners on this project, because we want to really not limit it to the walls of the university and make our visibility as national and preferably as global as we can. So it is my great honor to introduce not only Dr. Deborah Willis, our fearless director for the Center of Black Visual Culture and my favorite co-conspirator. I just want to say that there'll be time for an audience Q&A at the end. And for anyone who is joining us remotely, please make sure to put your questions in the chat and we'll pull them up as they're entered. We'll pass a mic at the end for those who are here in person. I would also like to take this moment to introduce our Center for Black Visual Culture artist scholar in residence, the Nat Bishop, Tricia Hersey. Tricia Hersey has over 20 years of experience as a multidisciplinary artist, writer, theologian, and community organizer. She is a Chicago native who has called Atlanta her home for 13 years. Tricia is the founder of the Nat Ministry, the originator of the Rest as Resistance and Rest as Reparations frameworks, and creates sacred spaces where the liberatory, restorative, and disruptive power of rest can take hold. The Nat Ministry is an organization that examines rest as a form of resistance and reparations by curating spaces for the community to rest via community rest activations, immersive workshops, performance art installations, and social media. Tricia's work is seated within the soils of Black radical thought, somatics, Afrofuturism, womanism, liberation theology, and is a guide for how to collectively deprogram, decolonize, and unravel ourselves from the wreckage of capitalism and white supremacy. Her work has been seen at MoCA Cleveland, School of the Art Institute Chicago, Speed Art Museum, Hartsfield Atlanta International Airport, and organizations nationwide and internationally. She holds a Bachelor of Science in Public Health from Eastern Illinois University, and a Master of Divinity from the Candler School of Theology at Emory University. Welcome, Tricia Hersey. And now Dr. Deborah Willis.
Thank you, Joan. I'd also like to thank everyone here, the tech team, Tom, everyone here to help guide us through technology, but also through the concept of rest. So great to see you. And just to have the opportunity to show our work that we curated over the past year, creating a concept because we all did not know what rest looked like, because we don't rest. So having the opportunity to have artists to explore the idea of rest. When we contacted each of you, we thank you for considering ways to consider the idea, but also to reimagine the idea of what does rest look like. And we also focused on a time during COVID when we lost so many people and the horrific experiences that we imagined, reimagined, and wanted to ignore, but we also rested. So we needed to rethink the experience. So I'd like to start off with reading a few lines from the bio of Adama Delphine Fawundu, who has been my guiding light for a long time. And I met her when she was pregnant. She had a walking baby and a baby in arms. Wonderful work that her young children are doing, but following in their mother's footsteps, they're making a difference. They're transforming the art world. So Adama Delphine Fawundu is a photographer, visual artist based in Brooklyn. Her language centers on ancestral memory. She's co-published with Layla, the IMFON Women Photographers. She's also won a number of awards, Catchlight Fellowship, Anonymous Was a Woman. She's a professor at Columbia University Art School. She exhibited also at 100 Years, 100 Women. She has a fantastic show now, Newark Museum, and I hope you all get a chance to see it before it closes in March 2024, so right. And then we also have, I'm looking at Colette Veasey-Cullors is Dean and Deputy Director of the International Center of Photography School. And her artistic yes. Her artistic practice, she's also looking at home and investigating stories about family, race, class, memory, and identity. We met when she was a graduate student, just the other day. She's committed to social and creative engagement with individuals and communities that are historically under-investigated and underrepresented. Her work is included in the National Museum of African American History and Culture. She is also in American History at the Smithsonian. She has been in a number of exhibitions in Philadelphia, and Baltimore, Houston, and Chattanooga. So I'm just going to do short bios because we can go on for a long time. Daveed Baptiste, very proud to have him here. And to think about his work as an artist, crossing all genres from fashion, textiles, and photography. He draws his inspiration from his migration from Port-au-Prince, Haiti, to Miami, through collaborative projects like Haiti to Hood and Between Lands. Baptiste investigates the notion of race, gender, and class within Haitian communities and the larger Caribbean community. He was awarded a year-long apprenticeship with Converse, which was really exciting when we found that out, where he designed the Black Joy collection. He wore new colorful way material design of energy basketball team. Baptiste earned his BFA at Parsons, and he also has been published in New Yorker and American Vogue, and is part of an exhibition that we created here at the NYU Department of Photography and Imaging that focused on home, reimagining home. Deborah Jack, so I'm gonna flip through. Deborah Jack is a St. Martin and Jersey City-based multidisciplinary artist whose work is based in video and sound installation, photography, painting, and text. I've also met Deborah years ago as a student, and to see her work transform as she engages a variety of strategies for mining the intersections of history, cultural memory, ecology, and climate change. She's really making us think about how to think about climate change within the Caribbean, when we're thinking about vacation and rest, and we're thinking about homeland for people who are focusing on the weather changes in the Caribbean. She had a retrospective, 20 years at the Pen and Brush in New York City. A number of people visited her show. She showed the Perez Art Museum and in other places such as the Caribbean Cultural Center. And she's a recipient of the 2021 Nancy Graves Grant for Visual Artists, and she's a 2023 Changing Climate resident at the Santa Fe Art Institute. So welcome. Professor Higgins is my dearest and oldest friend. We met in 1970.
I was only 16.
And really transformed. He was researching Black photographers. I was researching Black photographers. And he introduced P.H. Polk to me, which is part of my life. With his camera, he wrestles with issues of memory, place, and identity. He sees his life as a narrative and his photography as expression. His art gives visual voice to his personal and collective memories. It is inside ordinary moments where he finds windows into a larger meaning. Light, perspective, and points in time are the pivotal elements he's used to reveal an interior presence within his subjects. He is having an exhibition now at the Bruce Silverstein Gallery, which opens next Thursday? This Thursday coming in Chelsea, so please visit that show. He published a book, Black Women, Drums of Life, some time ago in the 70s and 80s, 90s. He also published a book, The Elder Grace, The Nobility of Aging. You still believe that? His memoir entitled Echo of the Spirit, A Photographer's Journey, it illustrated ancient Nubia, African kingdoms on the Nile. His most recent book, Sacred Nile, and he just returned recently, is another transforming book. He has been on CBS Sunday Morning, NewsHour, ABC, Like It Is, Freedom Forum. He's just been an amazing presence in our photographic history, and we thank you all for being here.
Thank you all for being here. Thank you for that beautiful introduction, Dr. Deb, who is like the mentor to everyone under the sun. We love you so much. And thank you, Dr. Joan Morgan, for your vision and your persistence, even in the midst of chaos. You believe. And you too, Tricia. Thank you. You know, we have to have that vision beyond all of this that's happening, right? We know that there's something else. And as long as we're doing the work and then imagining it, then it's possible. So I'll start with my work. Like, we could go to the next slide. I'm very much interested in the idea of ancestral memory and the power in ancestral memory. And I'm also interested in the idea of indigenization. I feel like we do have to tap into some indigenous ways of thinking as we think about how to move forward. And we need to, you know, it's not that we copy things, but we use information to think forward. So this piece here is called Passageways, number 2, Secrets, Traditions, Spoken and Unspoken Truths or Not. And I'm here, like I use myself in my work all the time. I got my mother to perform with me. I'm really interested in textiles. The dress that I'm wearing is a dress that was hand-dyed by my grandma Adama, who lived in Sierra Leone, in Pujon, Sierra Leone. I only met her twice in my life, once when I was 4 and then again when I was about 20. And as I started making work and moving in this direction of doing more conceptual work, I thought about, I immediately thought about my ancestry, and I'm named after her. And I thought about her textiles, and her textiles, I have like over, textiles that are over 50 years old in my collection. And so for me, thinking about the way that these textiles are made with water, with care, with love, and with creativity, and with her hands, it was like symbolic, a symbolic way of looking at ancestry. And not just my own ancestry, but this deep-rooted ancestry between Africa and this diaspora, which is so rich. And so I'm thinking about all of that. But also, again, the truths, the unspoken truths or not, like all of this stuff that gets intertwined and transformed in terms of communication. And this position, this is my position for real with my mom, is the most comfortable position to be in. So it's interesting, like in the midst of making most of my work that I use, there's always a personal thing. Like you'll see me, if we go to the next slide, you'll see me in a river, something that I just wouldn't do on a normal day. But in this river, this is the Waje River in Sierra Leone, in the town where my grandmother was born. And so I went to Sierra Leone, to this town for the first time in 2017. Normally when I go to Freetown, but I wanted to go to my grandmother's town. This dress that I'm wearing was hand-dyed by her, and it's a Mami Wata dress. And I'll tell you a brief story, and please tell me time, because I don't want to go on, I could talk. But a brief story, as I was thinking about some of the things that I wanted to explore, on my way going to Sierra Leone, I just took this dress with me, not realizing what it was. I think I may have known at some point, but this dress is older than all of my children. So I took it with me, and when I laid it out, when I was in Pujon, I realized it was a Mami Wata dress, beautifully designed. If you look around the bottom area, you'll see the scales, and the water is symbolic, in the midsection. And so I was just so, I also learned from my cousins, I went to a place called Mano. And Mano is where the Fawundus come from, and it's 3 hours, a 3-hour slow boat ride off the coast of Sierra Leone. And so we are water people. That's what my cousins, we're water people. We don't fear water, right? And so it was kind of doing this research into my own narrative that I started, placing my body in these spaces. And if we go to the next slide, here is me thinking about my grandfather. Last year, I traveled to Cuba with my bestie, Layla, and I was doing research on, where he came from. He has a very interesting narrative. In the 1890s, he migrated to Sierra Leone and Equatorial Guinea. I think he was headed towards Nigeria, but this is we don't hear about this history of this massive migration from Cuba back to Africa. And so it's something that I'm still unmining, and I know somewhere deep in my spirit, I'm connected to Yoruba. I never understood why until I started really unpacking his history. And then my mother in 2021, when we're in the Gullah Sea Islands, right? Because that's a part of my research. She goes, I'm interviewing her. She goes, well, when I was younger, we used to go to Nigeria to visit family. I'm like, really? Are you just telling me this now? So again, when we think about this memory that lives in our body, I never understood why Nigeria is the place that I visited over 20 times, most place in my life, right? And why my spirit is called to that place. But then it's something within us. So we could go to the next slide. And this is from a film, if you go to the Newark Museum. I purposely didn't show the whole film, so you have to go to the Newark Museum to see it. So this is a still from a video that I made, and it's called Pali. In Mende, Pali means the seat of the ancestors and the water spirits. And so this film pieces together different parts of the diaspora, mostly in natural environments. And I'm thinking about where we resisted, you know, so I'm thinking about the spirit of Quilombo, the spirit of the Maroons, the spirit of the Gullahs and the Geechees, you know, where we resisted, you know, it throughout the diaspora and on the continent. And then next, you have Sea Whispers for Mami Wata at the shore of Guanahani, and that is that's the indigenous word for the Bahamas. And so parts of the film are also in the Bahamas. There is Cuba, it's the Sea Islands, the St. Helena Island, Georgetown, Johns Island, all of these different places intertwined. Like I think of our bodies as these, you know, we're collages pretty much, right? And we have so much richness within us. And I'm really just thinking, how do we collectively make the futures that we want? Because I think we have the power to do that. And I'll finish here. Thank you.
I'd like to take a moment to first thank Dr. Deborah Willis, Kara Joy Williams, Dr. Joan Morgan for inviting me to participate in this very, very important exhibition and panel. And I'd also like to take just a minute to thank each and every one of you for choosing to be with us today, because we all have many choices of how we spend our time. And I'm just very grateful and thankful for you all being here. Can you go to the first slide? So as that says, I'm Colette Veasey-Cullors, and we're gonna just hold it at this slide just for a minute. I took some time and care at about midnight last night thinking about, Delphine and I were talking about that, thinking about what I wanted to say and how I wanted to say it. And I think language is extremely important. And so I'd like you to just sit with the language that I'm about to share with you for a minute, and then we will get to the images. So, my childhood is so intricately woven into Big Mama's house. I can recall the memories with each glance of her bed, her kitchen table, her special chair. She is everywhere and in everything. Her sweat, her sacrifices, her joy, pain, her love. Home at Last is my attempt at retracing the familial and intimate qualities of my childhood memories through the remains of my deceased grandmother's crumbling home. A structure left to its own demise, frequented by human and animal visitors. A suspension of time through the subconscious recall of memories in order to explore the intricate connections to home and family, life and death. Big Mama's priorities, like many women of her generation, was the day-to-day labor of care for her family. 1 husband, 7 children, 11 grandchildren, 10 great-grandchildren before her passing, which we all expected. Not vindictively so, but yes, unconsciously expected her labor of care each and every day. It is in memory that the links to the past are forged. It reveals the intricacies and connections that the past and present hold. Our experiences are held in the subconscious, always informing our perceptions of self, as well as our relationships. How we understand their impact on our lives helps us to understand their significance and the interweaving of the past and present. Photography has an inescapable relationship to memory. we attempt to visually confine a moment in time to hold its preciousness and perhaps even suspend the inevitable. Our migration from the world we know to the unknown, death. Big Mama's house was finally raised in 2013, 2 years after her transition. Her sweat, her sacrifices, her joy, pain, her love are her ever-present power that emanates through me today, right here, right now, to be shared with you, those that chose to be with us today. Big Mama is home at last, resting in all her power. And I thank you for being here to talk about rest and restorative power. So all of the images in this series, Home at Last, were taken over a 2-year time period after Big Mama's transition. I grew up next door to my grandmother, and so my house, her house, there was no separation. It was an extension of one house to the other. I'd get up in the morning, get dressed, race out the door, go into Big Mama's house, and it wasn't a house that anybody had to knock on the door. You just walked in because everyone was welcome. So her house was my house, was our house, was your house, was everyone's house. So with her passing, the family all claimed their belongings. Everybody grabbed what they wanted, what they subconsciously or consciously had their names on for years. And then what remained, remained. And so I tasked myself with going back home to Big Mama's house in Texas over a 2-year stint. And I had rules for myself upon entering the house because I never quite knew what I would be welcomed with upon entering. I would not add anything. I would not subtract anything. I would not move anything. So I would find the house as it is and document. But as moving through each room, remembering that little girl running through the house, living a life, and trying my best to visually articulate that love, the journeys, the pain, the triumphs, the sadness that we all experienced, while also stepping over Christmas ornaments, clothing, dishes, rugs, sweaters, medication bottles that still had her name on it, her brush with strands of her hair still in it. Whew. So, upon entering, this is her door. Her chair that no one sat in, even after her passing, because we all felt her presence still in that chair. Her glass, her stove, that pot sitting on that stove, I did not add that pot. And all the residue of all the many, many, many meals made in that pot. Her dining room, where a family of 7 children, 11 grandchildren, and 10 great-grandchildren before her passing sat in for every holiday meal that she handmade herself with no help because no one was allowed in her kitchen. Her closet, the one that I sat in as a little child, looking through shoe boxes of our family archive, asking Big Mama, who is this? Who is this? How are we related to this person? So photography has always been, and my relationship to images has always been. Her dresser, with her brush sitting on top, with strands of her hair still embedded in it. Pill box on the floor with her name and the prescription title, still sitting there 2 years after her transition. And finally, her bed. The bed that I would sleep in with her at night when family members would come to visit. And she would tell me the next day who came to visit the room that night before. And I was terrified. Wait, there were spirits in the room? Yes, there were always spirits in the room. I thank you so very much.
Hello, everyone. My name is Daveed Baptiste, and I am super, super, super excited to be here and share with y'all my story and images that I often have not exhibited and haven't been exhibited. I like to save them for these moments because they're images that are very dear to me, and were taken like at a very precious time in my life. When I was invited to be a part of this exhibition, I think the title like really, really stuck with me. Rest is power. And coming from a Caribbean house, you know, the idea of rest is such a fantasy. And it's like, I think my mother doesn't know I'm doing this panel. I think she would laugh if she like, if she knew I was doing a panel, and these are some of the themes. But they're themes that she experiences, that our family experiences, that we don't always have the language for, but it's a part of how we move and it's a part of our culture. So how I want to go about this is I want to show y'all some of the images that I took when I was in my teens. I've been shooting since I was in 8th grade. I think I was like 14 years old. And those images help explain a little bit about myself, a little bit about some of the themes in the exhibit. And they also explain how I arrived at the 2 images that we have downstairs. So I came to the US from Haiti, Port-au-Prince, when I was about 6 years old. And I think it's important to say, and I always lead with this, that I grew up in a working family. My father wasn't in the picture, and my mother was still in Haiti, and it was my brother and my older sister who were raising me. And so I grew up in a house where I watched teenagers raising kids. And we just had one rule. It was like, don't get in trouble. Because if you get in trouble, they're gonna find out that your parents not here, and we don't want that. So growing up and watching that, I watched my sister, she had 2 jobs while she was going to high school to pay rent. She was 17 and she was working at a sports bar in Miami, Florida called Duffy's. And then my brother, I want to say he was I'm 26 now. My brother, I think he was a little bit older than younger than what I am now. He must have been in his earlier 20s, and he was working at Shake Shack in the kitchen. And he would bring us back Shake Shack home. My sister would bring back some burgers from Duffy's. And that's the kind of energy I grew up around. We were extremely poor. We were the kind of poor that they do not show on American television. And so I watched folks work and work and work. And I want to bring that back to what that means for me, and the themes of rest and the themes of power and how those kind of work together and sometimes don't. And in the previous image that y'all had saw, that my sister, she eventually, after working at Duffy's, became part of, she was in the military. And so I think in my family, and as Caribbean folks and as immigrants, something that was constantly instilled in me was that my skills would liberate me. The things that I learned and the things that we learned, if we became really, really good at it, it would bring us to a place that was further than where we came from. This is back in Miami. All of the images, by the way, are taken in North Miami, specifically in Overtown, and the neighborhood that we grew up in. This was, I think this is my brother's ex-girlfriend. But I love this image because it shows, and I want to be able to like make y'all smile and speak about these moments in a light way, because I think sometimes when people speak about things like poverty and migration and things that affect like Black folks, there's always such a gloom to it. I don't think this is a very joyous image. Like, I think it needs like some of my energy to give you the context of like, yes, there's struggle, but there's also warmth, and there's joy, and there's happiness, and there's laughter. Over time, I had learned, I became really good at photography. I became really good at image making. My sister became a pilot in the military, and my brother taught himself how to code, and later in his life now became a software engineer at Apple. And so I wanted to share this lineage because, you know, I know the girls like to tussle, but I feel like it's, and we can get into capitalism and all that stuff, but coming from like my cultural experience and my background and how I grew up in America, how I grew up in this country, you know, these were the things that brought us rest. Like our skills, the things we learned, the idea of the American dream, staying in school, the very cliche shit that you just learned as a kid, for a lot of folks, is the reality of what liberation looks like. Weirdly and unfortunately, sometimes money does bring rest. And so when I was invited to this show, to this exhibit, I really thought hard about like my upbringing in America, and I thought about the places we were and how we got there, and what does that look like for us. And I spoke to my sister about some of the themes this morning, and she was like, "You was up at 3 a.m. How you gonna come up here and talk about rest?" And then if we could go to the next image, please. And then I want to end story time with my mother, which I think for a lot of image makers, a lot of artists, a lot of creatives, our mothers are, they just, I don't have the words. They're our first person that we photograph. They're the best images that we make. They're the best like paintings that we make. And I remember when I got like my financial aid back, it was like a little refund check. I went to Haiti and I brought my camera with me, and I photographed home. That was my first time returning back to the Caribbean. And if we could go to the next couple images, and if we could move through them just a tad bit quicker. Okay, we could pause right here. Thank you. And I love this image because she posed for this completely, and she ate. And I love it because I think folks who study image making, now we're in a time where we can be more stylistic with our images, and that's being rewarded. But a lot of the first things we're taught is to document home, documentary is the way. And there's so many little nooks in there because there's so many moments in the documentary image that you just might not know about. So, I think at first she was wearing like a red silk, and she said, that's the devil's color. Right. And so she went to her room, she got the white silk dress, and she laid, I think if my mom was born into my generation, she'll be like an Instagram girl. But to me, she recently, and I know I'm like over time, I'm gonna wrap it up real quick. And she recently moved to the US 8 years ago. I grew up my life without seeing her, and I'm watching her become an American. I'm watching her learn what it means to be like a New Yorker, what it means to work a 9 to 5. And although she works, she finds rest in prayer. She finds rest, although she doesn't go to church as much as she used to when she was living in the Caribbean. She finds rest in those silent moments with the Bible. And I don't read the Bible in the same way that she does, but when I think about this moment, I understand it and I get it. And that's my 2 cents.
Good evening, I'm Deborah. I just want to echo the rest of the panel and say thank you to Dr. Dab and Dr. Joan Morgan, Kira, for helping coordinate a lot of this. It's a real pleasure to be here. I'm going to show a video, 5-minute clip, so the clip will do the talking for me. But I do want to just sort of set the tone in terms of the theme. I too laughed. I am a Caribbean mother. My daughter sends me many memes about Caribbean mothers, and so apparently I live up to all the bad reputation. One of my favorite quotes by her, though, is that my mother, her grandmother, and I have a flawed relationship with labor. And she said that to me when I had to have my hip replaced, and she overheard me arguing with HR, who gave me an entire semester off. And I was like, I only need 3 weeks. I can teach the rest of the semester online. And I was going back and forth, and he's like, you're entitled to this. And then he looks, he's like, well, let me see how many sick days you have. And he's like, you have 179 sick days accrued. He's like, you can't retire with these. And I was like, I understand the sick days. I know I have enough sick days. I just don't understand why I need an entire semester. And then he goes, you're gonna be paid no matter what. And I was like, it's not about the money. I'm like, I said, I don't wanna leave my department in the lurch, and my students need me. I can teach the rest of the semester online. And then somewhere during that conversation, his tone sort of told me that he was slowing down as if speaking to a simple person. So I hung up, and then I went to her and I said, the nerve of this guy, can you imagine, blah, blah, blah. And she's like shaking her head, and she's like, what is wrong with you? She's like, there are people who would die to be able to sort of like get an entire semester paid off to heal. And the guy actually did say that. He's like, it's your right to heal. And so I said that to her almost like, could you believe this guy? He said it was my right to heal. So her response was, you have a flawed relationship with labor. And so I hear it in my head every now and again when I'm doing the same sort of thing. A lot of my work looks at water. And the water, in a way, taught me to rest. The first thing you learn to do as a kid on an island is swim. Well, my father, anyway, made us swim. And the first thing we did was float. And you can't float if you don't let go. And I'm a bad floater. I sink. I'd rather swim. And so I had to learn as an adult to sort of release and let the water carry you. And so what we're looking at is a clip called "The Water Between Us Remembers." So we wear this history on our skin, long for a sea bath, and hope the salt will cure what ails us. It's about history, memory, culture, but it's also about this young girl finding play as an ancestor and a descendant at the same time, and her negotiating her way between the land and the sea. And there are moments of play and moments of escape. And it ends with a song, which is a St. Martin folk song, and you hear a sort of voice, and the woman is asking an overseer to let her friend go home and rest because she's not feeling well. So those are just some of the parts that make maybe a little bit more understandable. This is just a selection from the piece.
Bomalia Lao, let Martha go home. Bomalia Lao, Bomalia Lao, pain in me belly. Bomalia Lao, no younger soul.
I'm so proud of all the things I've seen and the different messages that we've heard. And like the rest of us, I'm trying to find peace as I discover the rest of me. And our memories are what declare our time in this, our meaning, our character in this envelope of time and space. My imagery, I sort of say to people that I know, like we all here know, that we are the summation of a lot of things. And a lot of those things are the influence of other people who are dear to us, who leave an indelible mark upon our minds, but more especially upon our hearts. And it's those memories that we investigate, that we look at again, that reinvigorate us of who we are. I've sort of looked to the evidence of who we are in many different places as a way of finding me. And I'll start with a couple of images. So this is the image in the show of when I was in Mali, and I was heading to a Fulani village from Mopti. And these boots sort of protect you from the hot desert sun. And I was riding up the Niger River for almost a couple hours. And at some point, the pole man, who was no longer needed because we were in the middle of the river, took a nap. Sitting underneath the canopy, I fell in love with the perfection of the positive and negative space. And then I come to know among the Malians, the Dogon, that there is a concept they call Kanaka, which is really, it looks like if you're looking down at the back of let's see, things that run around, scorpion sort. But also has the symbol of the sign of the Egyptian sign for soul, the hands up. And with the water shooting against the light, to me, it made a soulful message that resonated in our individual and collective memory. Next, please. And here in Brazil, we have women who are priestesses of Yeminya. For those of you who have any knowledge of African religion, my head is Ogun, my wife's head is Yeminya, so we should not be together. I'm Scorpio, she's Aries, so we should not be together. So for the last 40 years, we should not be together. So these women are going to make an offering to Yeminya, because Yeminya is the goddess of fresh water. And they wanted to make their offerings. And this sort of thing goes back to the time of Egypt, when once a year, people would gather their sins and they would cast them on the head of a cow, the whole community. And once they do that, the cow will be thrown into the river as an offering to the water gods. It's a peacefulness about ceremony. There's a reckoning about ceremony that helps us to unload what we have been through and so that we come anew, purified, to embrace once again. So I'm looking at there again, how do we solve issues about divinity, about sacredness, before we were polluted, and forgive me, some of you, I hope not to offend you, but polluted with patriarch Christianity. It's another ritual of contemplé that comes out of Nigeria, comes out of West Africa. A ritual of baptismal. Baptismal is a thing that comes off the temples and the walls of Egypt. You go there now, you'll see it. Here they use popcorn as the element of baptismal. The whole thing again, purification, because we are worthy to be purified. And the big difference I discovered between African religion, which is based on nature, and patriarchal religion, which is based upon men emasculating everybody else, is that there's no such thing as original sin. Nature does not make mistakes. That does not mean that you can't do things that you know are wrong, because you don't need a Bible to tell you what's right and wrong. But it does mean that when these things happen, because life is life, we're always making decisions and growing as we interface with life. And if in that interface we do something corrupt, there are ways, then that's an opportunity rather to cast out the pollution, to purify and continue on. In the summer of 73 and 74, I lived for the whole summer in Ghana. And I just essentially had a bag of film, a luggage bag of film, and maybe 2 pair of pants and a couple of shirts. Jeans were very sturdy, you know. And I just hitchhiked from town to town, or village to village. And I ran into this guy, Kwaku, in the whole region. And we went to his house, his parents' house, and Kwaku meditates as a way of resting his soul. And I was really enamored by this. And I must say that as a photographer, I try not to affect what I'm looking at. But when I came upon him, I had been talking to his parents, and I came into the room, and I said, Kwaku, please, let me do one thing. Can I change the direction of the rug? Just, you know, kind of composition, it made more sense to me. Rest, again, how we rest to recuperate. And here is an infirmary in the Cameroons, in Douala, of a woman tending love. Love, medicine can only do so much for us. Love makes a difference. It bridges the gap. And this is what, shows his worth, her ability, and it's just, I always think about in my photography is that, we are, what is missing in the media is how worthy and sacred people of color are. Because it's been the mission of people who don't have color to dismiss us and rob us of the things that make us, every human being, great. And here in all my work, I try to look at this. I approach my people as sacred objects in sacred time. There's a priest high up in a mountain in a sacred cave in Ethiopia, in Hazan. I think we're 8,600 feet above sea level. Took me a day. I did rock climbing, mountain climbing, for a while to learn how to, because I was obsessed with the photographing the Milky Way. So it took me about a good day with the help of a crew to get to this place, and then to hang out overnight for the Milky Way, because the Milky Way doesn't come up to about 4 o'clock, 4:30. But here we have Harlem in the early 70s, that morning cup of coffee and cigarettes.
Mm-hmm.
And the bars where the lonely go and satiate themselves with alcohol. So as all of my work is self-assigned. Some projects, and I tend to work as a project oriented, because I want some way to measure myself, to see if I'm really achieving what I think I set this project out to be. So I started doing Ankh visitations to graves of people who I did not live to photograph, or who at a different time. So I look up people's graves, and I go and I do a visitation, and I take my Ankh and I place it on the grave, and I make my pictures. It's a visitation of an internal visitation from time immortal to here. Here it started out, there's another Ankh. This is before I started doing my visitations. This is at the African burial ground, which I photographed for months to photograph to give dignity. Because, so many people, because we live in a culture of Halloween, we have this horrible image about death. And I did not want to leave it to other people to terrorize the bones of our people who were left behind. So I wanted to change how we see, to appreciate the fullness, because our memories of our loved ones are dear, but also the spirit of the person who walked and lived in those bones is still there. So how do I try to give some sort of room for that spirit to express itself, even though it no longer has the flesh? And this is what I was trying to do. Here's another visitation. Some of you may recognize that name. What's your name? Harriet Tubman Davis. I found out that Harriet is her final resting place is in Auburn, New York. And I found out that Frederick Douglass is in Rochester. And what I haven't done yet is Sojourner Truth. I found out she's in some part of Michigan. This is rest of Queen Nefertari. You may have heard of a man in ancient history named Ramses. Ramses the Great. This is his widow. This is his wife. He predeceased her. And this is a game that she played, that Egyptians would play like you play checkers. So in her tomb, among the many other things that's shown in this tomb, it's an incredible tomb, rooms and rooms and passages is her playing what's called sonnet. And this is the final image. The Egyptians believed somehow that rest in death was also very important. Good death is important. Taking the memories of a person and then putting it in their tomb which were to them their apartments of eternity, were also important. And here you have one of the youngest kings of ancient Egypt. You may have heard this name, King Tut. Well, King Tut was only found 100 years ago. But what's incredible is that the protection that the priests made in their glyphs protected him from human eyes for 3,200 years. And what you're looking at is one of the three inner coffins. And his tomb had enough gold in it that what has been found is worth $81 million. But that's only a third of what should have been in his tomb that had been robbed before. So you have the remains of King Tut. This is what bling actually looks like. And this is a part of our memory, but we don't know it. As I study more and more about history in Africa and around the world, I've come to the conclusion, and we're gaining on this, is that the unfortunate definition of the African American is an African without memory and an American without agency. Thank you.
I feel like we just need to sit for a minute. Like, we just got so fed by this whole panel. Like, I'm full, as the elders would say. I'm really full right now of so much, I don't know, so much beauty and so much care, and the idea of rest and the idea of possibility is so just rich. Yeah, I feel like we kind of ran through everyone real quick. It was like, do your 5-7 minutes. We got nice cards, just showing everybody their time. Wrap it up. Like, I thought we kind of rushed through it, but it was just so much, so many gems in there, so much wisdom, so much knowledge. And you see you shaking your head. Just like, you know, as a poet, I love when like a word or a phrase just sticks with me, and just so many have stuck with me from everyone's conversations, and how full I am to have people thinking about rest. And what's interesting is when I started the Net Ministry, before anyone ever knew anything about it, I was in graduate school studying cultural trauma. I was actually interviewing Jim Crow survivors and talking to them about their bodies and what it felt like to kind of whole body the somatics of what racism and terrorism did to our bodies. And so I was doing that, and at the same time I was exhausted, and then I was working as an archivist, and so I was just like in the archives, just digging. And one of the first things I ever did was put together a PowerPoint, which is so interesting, of just images of Black people at rest. So as an archivist, I just was digging like everywhere I could, every archive I can get in, like where are there photos of my ancestors, of anyone resting? And it was very difficult. I mean, it was very difficult. I think I probably was able to pull together 30 images. I mean, we're going back, you know, pictures of sharecroppers kind of sneaking little sleeps moments, and a flood that was once happened in Mississippi where a woman is like sleeping on top of all these bedding. Maybe when I come back and do my public lecture, I'll bring that PowerPoint and show it, because it's so interesting. I was very clear that it would only be images of Black people that I would ever show, ever. So I didn't have to be so hardcore, you know, Public Enemy, I'm on that, like I go there, but I didn't have to be so hardcore Public Enemy about this is for Black people, because it was more like, I'm Black. This comes out of a lens of Black liberation and scholarship. It came out of me studying plantation labor in the South, mainly Mississippi and Alabama and Georgia. and they're only gonna see Black bodies at rest. Like, I was very intentional about how I would use social media, how I would put things up, it will only be, so anybody who will be like, what's this about? They will at least know, this is some Black stuff, but at the same time, they would also know I wanted this to come later, that Black liberation is a balm for all of humanity. Until we're free, nobody free. So it behooves you to get on the side of looking at the liberation of Black people, marginalized people, because there is no liberation without us at the center. So I knew that the humanity of it would really be rich, and that people would see this as a human global movement. I always knew it would be global. I always wanted to be very based in humanity and to see Blackness as the balm for the entire world. And so I just am so full right now thinking about the work that's happening here and being able to be here with the Center for Black Res. And when I first met Joan at my book tour last year, when I was here, my book came out October 11th. It's almost a year. Hasn't even been a year yet. Wow. Yeah. When I think about it, it feels like it's been 10 years. Pulling out their book, oh, y'all so sweet. Oh, I love that. It feels like so long ago that came out, but my first book tour was at the Schomburg in Harlem. I thought that was amazing. Yes. Some people were probably there. Yeah, it was like the most wildest, funniest, Blackness. It was so awesome. It was like, are we at church? It was like, did somebody bring an organ out? Are we about to do what are we doing right now? It was so beautiful. But John was telling me, we're doing something around your work. And I was like, okay, what are you talking about? Like, it was just like, it was so rushed how my tour was. It was like, I was going from place to place to place to place. It was very against rest, actually, how I toured that book. It was. And I was just like, what do you mean? She was like, we're going to talk about it. I'm like, okay, we'll talk, and I'll go on to my other thousands of events that I had to do. And so it just continued to sit with me, like this idea of people studying this work from a way that really digs deep. That's what I want this work to do, is to just dig deep. I don't have all the answers. I don't think we don't have to get to the end of the road and say, what are the answers to this? I think the hope and the possibility of understanding that something is not normal about how we're living, that this unsustainable pace of life is going to kill us all. It's killing the planet already. So the planet is already dying because of how we move. And so I wanted it to just sit with us that this is a justice movement around care and around deep political refusal. So even if you don't know what it's going to look like, don't get caught up in that you don't rest because you don't know how to rest, because what does that look like? Because literally, if you are living in this system and making it, you have found moments to survive. So therefore, you have found moments to rest because you reimagine what it could look like to sit and have silence and to connect with your body. So I think about the photo of your mom laying on the bed, reading the Bible, and how I think about my grandmother, Aura, who worked 2-3 jobs, recovering from PTSD, from post-traumatic stress. She had saw a lynching in Mississippi, that's why she left the Great Migration. She came to Chicago, but she was still suffering from seeing that. And every day she sat on the couch for 30 minutes and rested her eyes. She meditated, she listened to God. She would tell me, I'm listening to the universe. I'm listening to God. So when I hear people say, I don't know how to rest, I don't have time to rest, you have found ways in this system to embody a way that uplifts your divine, of your divinity, or you wouldn't be alive, So I want to just say everybody's work is so beautiful. I felt like a portal was created, like the care of the curation, the care of all the images that come together really sit at the heart of this work, which is reimagination, which is imagination. We're going to have to reimagine and imagine what resting could look like in this system. It's not going to look like what you think. It's going to go get your little cute pillow and go hide away and close the door and tell the kids to hold on for an hour. I'm in the bedroom. Like, that's not necessarily gonna happen in a system like this. We have to look at ourselves as thinking about subversive maroonage, like trying to maroon away from the systems that have us caught up. So it's gonna look like resting your eyes for 30 minutes like my grandmother, laying on the bed, eating up a picture while you're reading the Bible. You know, like you're gonna have to slow down and have silence and prayer and slowing and saying no and like reimagining what it can look like. So I want to read a little poem from my book. I want us to maybe close our eyes and have a moment of rest right now, because wherever our bodies are, we can find rest, we can snatch time, we can bend time, we can embody what it feels like to slow down. Take a deep breath, just settle in. Rest is real life conversations. I don't know any other way to go. Rest is the roadmap, the guiding force, a truth teller. Rest is a meeting with self with a tight agenda. Rest is on your knees, whispering words silently on the right side of your bed. Rest is lunchtime dreaming, the energy of the Rastafarian who showed me how to pray standing up, with my eyes open, hands stretched wide, because how will you see and know when prayers are answered? Rest is holy oil from my mama's wooden dresser, Pompeian olive oil, the fancy kind in glass, blessed by the elders, poured over our heads as we rebuke the devil. Rest is the laying on of hands, a force field all around you. Rest is a dream made real, a portal, an honest place, a trusting place, a sacred refuge, a dissertation-length longing. Rest works, rest dreams, infinite power moving, care surrounding us. Rest is a gift and an antenna, an ancient call dangling on the tips of tongues from a head lightly connected on a silk pillow. Rest is holding us close. Rest is home. Cuddle into that for a minute. Like, we rush too much, we move on. I feel like this is a moment is happening. I've been saying, what a moment, like 3,000 times in the last month. Everything is a moment, like, because it's just so real to see the message of rest, the possibility of it spreading, and people taking hold and creating and remixing it for themselves. That alone is the power. So when we say rest is power, it is power to say no to systems who don't see you as whole human beings, who don't see you as divine and sacred, who see you as merely a tool to make the empire richer, a tool for their oppression. But to rest is to say, no, you can't have me. Try again. The gig is up. Don't pick nobody else. You know, it's not a pick nobody else, because we all have to be free in this. And so it's a burn down, you know. And so I really want us to start to see resting as not just some simple thing that we have this really difficult relationship with because of where we live and what's been taught us, to see it as a generative state of freedom, a place that is waiting for you to go into a portal that you can create on your own, that is generative, that is giving power, that wants to give hope, that I believe that the answers to take down the systems are waiting for us in our dreams. But we won't sit down long enough to get the downloads that our ancestors are offering to us, that the Creator is offering to us, that our own bodies are offering to us. So I imagine that our ancestors are looking at us like, if they don't just sit that thing down, I got something to say. I want to share. I want to tell them the next move, where to go, where to be, how to move in a system that hates you so much. And so the rest is love in that way. It's such a powerful reimagination to not see it as something that is a waste of time, but to see it as really the center of how we will get free. There is no freedom or liberation or rest movement without us seeing ourselves as the divine human beings we are. And so I guess that's what I want to say. And I want to say thank you so much to Joan. What a blessing you are. Just a blessing, blessing, blessing. To Dr. Deborah, to Kyra, who is Kira, she's not here with us tonight, but it's just been a blessing to be here since the beginning. I'll be in New York, but I'll be in and out for this residency that I'm doing for the fall. So I'll be doing like a public lecture, maybe some other little pop-ups, and I'm just so happy. I love New York so much. So if there's anybody who want to bring me back to New York, I want to spend like the summer here just getting into stuff, you know, get into things and to just see. So I just want to say this, please tell your friends about this exhibition. Share it. It's here until October 22nd. Bring your friends, tell people about it. They need to see it and sit with it and just kind of spend time in the portal that's been created, because each piece has created a portal that you can kind of move into, and I love how each piece is looking at rest so differently. You actually have actual rest, and you have someone hugging, and you have, you know, these beautiful images of home, and just how people have interpreted the idea of rest is really the heart of the work. Is to reimagine and reinterpret and take back what they told us about resting and forget all of that and create your own way. Imagine the world you want to see. Imagine the world that's truly centered in rest. And so our imaginations and our reimaginations are really what's going to be the key to us moving a movement like this forward. And just give yourself grace. I always hear people be like, I don't know how to run nap. I don't know what that looks like. It's okay to not know. It's fine. Like, you know, no one's, you know, got the stick trying to like, you need to get it together tonight. You know, like, no, like the fact that you just know that you feel in some way that the exhaustion that you're feeling is like doing too much for you. Like it's taken away from things that you could be feeling. Just understand and lean into the opportunity and the idea that you weren't born and placed on this earth just to work. That's it. I mean, that's not why you were born. That's not why I birthed my son. It's like, oh my God, come on and be birthed so I can just give you to the system and go work like an animal and never lay down and never sleep. Like, that's not why I decided to birth my son and bring him to the world. Like, I want him to be free, to feel that he is enough right now. No, nothing else you have to do. You are enough right now. The self-worth of it all, the self-value, valuing ourselves as whole human beings without doing another thing. I want a lot of Black people retired. Like, I want y'all thinking about what that could look like, how you could imagine, reimagine in community care and doing co-ops and working together on things is how we really gonna be able to see rest in a real way. And so thank you guys so much for coming out and listening to these beautiful, beautiful artists. What an honor to be sitting up here. And also there's some artists I think who are in the crowd who are actually part of the exhibition as well, right? Yeah. Leslie, where are you? Show yourselves. Stand up, yes. think there's time for questions. I'm not sure, I'm not keeping time, but I'm sure someone is.
So we have enough time for maybe 3 questions. I'm gonna pass it around.
Hi, my name is Dr. Arabia Molette. I'm an ER doctor in New York. I'm with my friend. She's also a family medicine doctor. Thank you. For a long time, right? We've been in this game for a long time, but we're tired. Thank you. I lived in Cuba for many years of my life. That's also I went to med school and did my training. And on October 10th is always the Day of Ancestors. And that's the day that everybody across the country take off to rest and honor their ancestors. And then, you go back the next day or so. When I came back to New York, it was very hard for me to be able to get through, and it's an emergency department, of course, it's trauma, but not every emergency is an emergency. And a lot of times people come in, it's because they're not really resting. The hard thing about us is that when we talk to our patients, especially because we work in our community, Black folks, Brownsville, South Bronx, Harlem, Black folks say, I can't rest, I gotta get out of here. And they sometimes have a heart attack and hypertension and a hypertensive crisis, and I'm like, I have to go. I can't rest, I gotta go to work. And then they come back to us dead. How can we reimagine rest, even in the most harshest system, which is the American medical system, that has been discriminated, violating Black folks since the inception of this country? How can we reimagine, even as Black medical doctors, to value that rest and try to get into our people, because it's hard and it's really disheartening to the point where our own people is turning against us because they're telling us that we're trying to get them, having them believe the white man medicine. And I'm just like, it's rest. This is not the white man's medicine. Like, what are you talking about?
And if we rest, it's shunned upon,
Even for us.
If we take naps during call, the nurses will I would tell my lower residents, don't tell them that you're sleeping, because they'll wake you up, oh, I need this order, I need Tylenol.
Right.
It's like, rest is
And it's usually white nurses that do that to Black medical residents and physicians that will turn around and ding you. And they don't do that to me because I curse everybody out. But if you're a resident, they will get it. And we have to fight for our Black residents to not get kicked out of the program because they are resting.
When I tell you, I think people think it's a game and a joke, when I tell you every single system in this, everything in this culture is working in collaboration for us not to rest. And I name definitely the medical industry. I speak about that in my book. I talk about what happened with the medical industry. Trying to have my son in every single system. So when I say that, I really people need to sit with that grief a little. I think we want to rush to we need to grieve the fact that the entire system of where we are here in this culture does not want any of us resting. They don't see us as human beings. They see us as machines. Capitalism was created on plantations. The idea of machine level work is the same energy of it. And people think it's just some type of some little fluffy wellness mess, and it's not. This is real political refusal. This is real justice movement. We will not live without us seeing resting as truly the foundation for our lives. And so I would say to you in those moments, because I know what you mean, I know a person who had a heart attack, and the doctor was like, you're not going to nowhere. We're going to admit you, you're going upstairs. And they were trying to sneak out the hospital and leave, I got work tomorrow. So the brainwashing is so deep. I've been naming it as a brainwashing from the beginning. People have been laughing at me you so over the top, and you sure that's a lot? They just don't want to take in how violent this is. How violent grind culture is, how violent it is to not care for yourself and not rest. They call it burnout, and I hate when they use the word burnout, because it's this corporate whitewash word. Actually, what it is trauma. Mm-hmm. Trauma is showing up in your body because you've been violated. The violence against your body is showing up as burnout. Our bodies aren't created to burn out. They shouldn't burn out. We care for them, and so I would say in those little moments, it's going to be super triage, just on the ground. If there's someone that you could maybe have them even stop for 1 minute put on a app for 5 minutes and have them just close their eyes for 10 minutes, 5 minutes, like just finding these little moments to teach people that your resting can look like stopping and pausing for a minute, that you can take a deep breath, that you can have a little silence, that you can begin to incorporate these small little, because you're worthy of it. And I think Chester was talking about the worthy piece and what the systems have done to us, is they've stripped of us our worthiness. We don't believe that we deserve anything unless we burn ourselves out to get it. We hate ourselves. The culture has taught us to hate ourselves richly and deeply, and so we don't even think we deserve a moment to rest. We have connected our divine worth as a human being with how much we can get done. And so when you begin to do that, internalize capitalism, like I'm worthy of being alive and a human being, not because I was born in a miracle, but because I've done these 50 things on my to-do list. I've accomplished this. I've worked 20 hours. I've worked. When you begin to connect those two things together, that's when we're in the crisis that we're in right now, when you really like to see in death, you know. So I would just say the little triage moments, this is an outlier movement. This is a movement that is not going to be able to really deepen until the community begins to see it as what it is, pure on political refusal against the system that wants us all working until we dead, and then they'll walk over that body and bring another one in. When my father passed, they literally had 30 years while he was working. They brought his box and stuff that was on his desk to the house and had a job posting up the next day. They don't, yeah, they don't care. And so I feel like that rage, I need a lot more rage from us. I need this tender rage of like, I'm pissed off about how they treat us. Like I really am deeply, deeply in a tender place of rage for what the system has taught us about labor in our bodies. And so I want rest to be the repair. I want the idea of thinking about the possibility of rest to be the repair and the rescue that we need, and just one by one, step by step, one-on-one with people, and that's like the hope.
We have one other question.
Hi. So I think it was Chester Higgins, and I'm sorry if I'm like attributing the quote to the wrong person, but that said, trying to find peace as I discover the rest of me. And I just resonate with that a lot as someone that's on my own rest journey. And, you know, I, for context, quit recently a 6-figure job to focus on my role as a co-founder of a kind of feminist media organization. Thank you. Which was very scary, right? As someone that does not have generational wealth, right? As a Black person, as a Black woman. And it was because it was doing a lot of harm to my mental health, right? Sleeping, eye twitches, the whole thing. And so I had picked up your book maybe like a month before I made the decision. So there should be a trigger warning for folks that aren't ready on the book. And I have a colleague in the room who I will not point out, but followed me not far after. And I remember saying, here's this book, read this book. So I'm happy that she's here. But to my question, because I've noticed kind of in this journey that I've been on of sort of a public lexicon, I think, that's starting to take place around rest and rest as resistance, and, you know, your work in the NAP ministry, kind of, and also like liberation work. And so the thing that I'm curious about, because I think so much that folks forget, and I think you also mentioned it in the book, is that rest is also so much more than just like a nap, you know? And so, as also the artist in the room, my question is essentially kind of how do you see the evolution, or the, I guess, Black rest in particular, evolving? And what role can art play in really shaping that message?
That's a great final question. Great final question for the artist. So each of you, if you could answer.
Wow. No.
Deborah's ready.
You ready, Deb? Okay.
Deborah.
I was just gonna say, like, so especially with my video pieces and the sound that I do with them, that full piece, for instance, is 15 minutes. And a lot of times I use pausing there's I use sort of like a quiet sound. This has like a hum that's at the underneath the sound that's sort of, I don't know if it's necessarily restful, but those moments do force people to sort of slow down within the work, because a lot of times people think of music as driving a piece forward or like moving. And so for a lot of times, for me, the visuals are there, but the sound is a way to sort of lull people and force you to sit. Like I have seating in my video pieces just because people tend to move around through a show, go see stuff and so it's kind of built in as a strategy though, especially pausing. Because people get nervous too when you let the sound go for a long time. They're like, is something wrong? Is there like, why is the cut not happen? And even in the beginning when I made work like that, I myself would get nervous doing it. I'm like, is this too long? Will people walk out? Will people not sit with it? So I had to, for my own practice, sort of figure out a way to force myself to sit in those pauses in the audio and sometimes also in video.
I like to share, I think that as artists, as we pursue our art that feeds our soul, it gives us a moment of respite and rest. I also feel that since we all reside in America, our communities in America, looking at our art here is primary and very important. But what I also find is I give myself some luxury. And I give myself the luxury to spend a major or meaningful part of time in a culture that is dominated by people who look like me. Because what we don't realize, because we do it every day, how traumatic it is to live in this society. And if we put ourselves in the head of the people, Black people who fought against being here, and how they were conquered, their spirit was conquered, but it wasn't them that their oppressor really wanted. It was their children. Because their children will be raised in a society where the new normalcy was being in this oppressiveness. And the only way you can really see that difference is get out of it. So for once a year, I get out of it. For 6 weeks, I get out of it. And I tell people it's cheaper than therapy.
That's for sure.
Because the first thing that comes off of your shoulder is that you're not experiencing racism. That doesn't mean that you may not offend somebody who isn't the same color, but you offend them because of something you do, not because of what you look like. So if you're a Black person, and if you want some way to judge that you're in a majority Black culture, look at the few white people looking for each other.
I don't know. As you were talking, I wrote down, Tricia, I wrote down some words. So you said ancestral download, and the answers to take down the system are waiting for us in our dreams. And that resonated with me because I feel like these are the things that I'm thinking about as I'm making work. And so I'm in it. Like, you see, like in the middle of this pond, the foot touching the earth, and that feels so healing. So a lot of what I'm doing is this healing journey in different parts of the globe where our ancestors left us information that flows in the rivers and the wind. You could feel it in your body. So when I share the work, I'm trying to also extend that feeling to people who are experiencing it. And like you, Deborah, creating these long videos, like I have a 12-minute video that's just me undoing my braids and looking right at the person who's looking, and can you sit still and just be with it, and experience that ritualistic practice. And I think like the more that we do that, the more that we could be in tune and listen, and relax for a little bit. I told my student yesterday as we were thinking, she works a lot around the climate. And I said, this technology that they're using, like desalination, you want to take all the salt out of the water to use that as water. Everything that they do causes destruction. So I'm like, could you just relax for a second and just let the earth do what it does? You know, because this technology is too much. So I think, you know, even in that regard, the idea of just chill out, breathe, you know, and let life happen as it's supposed to, you know. So that's hopefully what we could communicate.
So I like to approach my work from the standpoint of storytelling of Black stories, Black lives, lives lived. And most of my series, I go long and deep. So I commit time and energy and presence. And a good portion of my work is based on memory. And so trying to communicate that to someone else so that they can sit with that and tap their own historical memories. So a lot of my work offers the viewer time in which to contemplate. And so I think that's my way of sharing that space of rest, right? And tapping into one's own experiences.
Okay, I want to thank everyone for joining us today, and thank our panelists and our scholar in residence, Tricia Hersey, for joining us. Can we get a round of applause, please? And just like Tricia said, our exhibition, Rest is Power, is going to be open through October 22nd. We have our gallery hours on our Instagram, which is at NYU CBVC. We're going to be posting any other programming surrounding the event in the exhibition on there as well. So turn on your notifications for that. And there's going to be gallery hours on the door as well. So please invite friends, family, cousins, neighbors to come and view our show. Thank you everybody for joining us, and we're going to wrap it up tonight.
Acknowledge India, who is our student worker. See what happens when you the work is also in the exhibition. This is really significant to show our student work as well as seasoned photographers and artists. And just the idea of having Celia represent us tonight means a lot. And I just want to say thank you. I want to also thank my colleague Jordan, Imani, and also the students of the BBL, Black Body and the Lens class, for helping out tonight. So thank you.